I'm David Murray, and I was Dean of the College of Arts from 1980 to 1992. 1 year as acting dean and 2 full terms of 5 years each. I loved the interaction with all the faculty, with students, the challenges that being dean of particularly the College of Arts posed during what was then, for me anyway, a challenging time. And all of the rewards that I saw happening both in the college and in the university. I think it was a time when we strengthened the BA program, when the College of Arts began to come into its own, and when we saw a lot of very good things happening. So what was not to like? Well, the top challenge was trying to have the arts not just accepted but cherished within the university as an integral part of the university. The University of Guelph was unusual in its foundation in that almost all other universities in Canada had the arts as their first element, and certainly there was never any question of the arts being an integral part of the university. With Guelph and its agricultural history, the arts were an add-on when the university was created, and both from the Department of Agriculture, which was opposed to the creation of a university because of the fear of what would happen to agriculture, and the university itself in transition from being a civil service institution to a university, the place of the arts was very uncertain. And even when I became dean, the biggest challenge was to make the arts not just acceptable, but as I said, cherished within the university and seen as a vital part of it. And that was a constant challenge from the time I started until the time I left, and probably hasn't been fulfilled yet, but there it is. So that was number one, and actually I wrote about it in the history of the university that I wrote in, I think it was published in 1989, when I titled the history of the university Hatching the Cowbird's Egg, because in that book there are 2 mentions of the cowbird's egg, and one of them is by the Deputy Minister of Agriculture when he feared that creating a university at Guelph would mean hatching the cowbird's egg, i.e. putting the egg, the arts, in the nest of agriculture, which might cause some serious difficulties. So it was a challenge, and I think it was a challenge that I saw at the time, and it was even more than the challenge of strengthening the BA program, which I think was the second challenge I faced. The BA program had come in, it was within even a few years a dominant part of the university. Actually, I recall that in the first 10 years of the university's graduation from about 1967 to 77, nearly 50% of the graduates came from the BA program. But I also discovered when I became dean that 60% of the people who entered the BA program in the first half of the 1970s didn't graduate. So there was a lot of work to do to strengthen the BA program, to improve the number of students who graduated, to strengthen our admissions, to look after our students who were here, to enhance their feelings about themselves, to enhance the BA program. And I think we succeeded in doing some of that. The third challenge, I think, was to strengthen various elements of the College of Arts itself. I discovered when I became dean that the fine and performing arts areas were hanging by a very thin string. And I did a number of things to try and enhance those areas. And I think that some of them had results far beyond what I could have ever anticipated. One specific example, I remember being called one day by the president, Don Forster, to ask whether I thought that the university's library buying the Lucy Maud Montgomery journals was a good idea. And I thought for a very few seconds and said, Don, it was his first name, I think it's probably one of the best investments the university could ever make, that we will have all sorts of benefits from some future scholarship, and I think that we should go ahead with this. And it was, I think, one of the largest purchases the university had made up to that point in terms of manuscripts. And I was then able to work to get Mary Rubio hired on faculty and give Mary and Elizabeth Waterston assistance to get them started on editing the journals, and the results have been far beyond what I could ever have imagined. The second area, or second element of that, was when we took the bull by the horns. It's a strange expression to describe what I'm about to say, and hired Connie Rook as the chair of the English department in 1988. Connie was a force of nature, and by bringing her to Guelph, we launched the Eden Mills Writing Festival. We began a program of creative writing that has, I think, taken off in various ways since, and it strengthened the areas of creative work both in English and in drama, and it complemented the creative work that was going on in music. So those are some of the areas that I think about, and actually starting the Writer in Residence program. And I think of somebody like Jane Urquhart, who did not just 1 but 2 degrees at the University of Guelph. She did an English degree, then came back, did an art history degree, and I was here long enough to bring her in as a writer in residence. So we see all sorts of wonderful outcomes from that. And because of the work to strengthen the arts and the creative side of the arts, I think that there was a spillover into the community of Guelph. When I came, Guelph was in many ways a cultural desert. There was very little going on, and whether it was restaurants or movie theaters or anything else. And as we worked to build the College of Arts, and graduates stayed on and went downtown, including the people who ran the bookshelf and who still run the bookshelf, these are College of Arts graduates, and I just am so proud of what they've done and what the college was able to do for the community, and look at the reputation that Guelph has now in terms of its artistic and creative areas. I was certainly involved in moving the Department of Fine Art into Zavitz. There are lots of interesting stories about Zavitz, including the fact that the students petitioned the president because of the conditions in Zavitz, where they were doing art, but I also had some other members come up and tell me that they didn't want to see the attic renovated because of the children who had been spawned, shall we say, up there. So I have some fascinating memories of what went on in Zavitz and of the transition that took place. But with Ron Shubrook and Walter Baczynski and some other people who contributed enormous hours to the redesign of Zavitz, and with the support actually of Brian Siegel, who was instrumental in bringing in the renovation of Zavitz. In fact, he told me that if we got the architect who had renovated part of Ryerson, that he would support us in renovating Zavitz, and we got the same architect, and I think he did a wonderful job. The other thing I would just add to that is that renovating Zavitz enabled us to enhance and provide a place for the print collection, which was an extraordinarily valuable and really hidden resource, both for the students and for the university. And it also provided space for students to exhibit their work. And all of these things, I think, were vitally important in enhancing the quality of the fine arts program. And if I had to summarize them in one phrase, it would be a critical sense of analysis, that studying the humanities helps people to enhance their perceptions of the world around them, of other people. It helps them with develop as individuals with that critical analysis. It may not get them a degree immediately, but it certainly enhances the value of the life that they will live. And I think that it probably, more than most people realize, is a bit like fine wine, that it improves with age, and the values simply increase over life. So I feel that particular element, whether we're talking about philosophy or history or English or fine and performing arts or languages, literatures, all of these areas provide windows into wonderful areas of human existence that, when studied, just provide the student with a great return.